I want you to just close your eyes for a second and picture a pure white background in your mind.
Yeah, just an endless, totally blank canvas.
Right. Nothing else. But then on the left side of your vision, this glaring, bright yellow billboard suddenly drops into frame.
It's an actual historical photograph, right, from 1925.
Exactly. And on this 1925 billboard, there is a cartoon monkey. And he's just grinning right at you, holding a book.
Which is such a bizarre image.
Yeah.
And then on the right side of this white room, you see stark black text start to type itself out in this heavy, bold font.
And it reads, "When absolute certainty leads to spiritual suffocation."
And, you look at that grinning monkey from a century ago,
Mm-hmm.
and your first instinct is probably to just laugh.
Sure. I mean, you think it's ancient history. Like, oh, that's just some quirky black and white joke about the old battle between science and religion.
We think we left that behind 100 years ago.
Yeah.
We assume we've, evolved past it.
But the terrifying reality, we haven't at all.
No, we are trapped in this completely bizarre historical time loop.
Because that exact same battle, the one from 1925, it is playing out right this very second, like literally on your phone.
Oh, yeah. In your social media feed. In your algorithms.
Right. We just traded those wooden, hand-painted billboards for digital echo chambers and political polarization.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're getting into Rachel Held Evans' memoir, Evolving in Monkeytown.
And just to set the stage for you, the mission of this deep dive isn't to just give you a basic book report.
No, we are basically performing an autopsy on a worldview.
We're exploring a historical and spiritual crisis. It's this violent collision between our desperate human need for absolute, unshakable certainty.
And the incredibly messy, undeniable reality of the modern world.
Right. So we're tackling a really massive question today. Why is it that the groups who scream the absolute loudest about possessing, like, total absolute truth, why do they almost always self-destruct the fastest?
It's such a fascinating phenomenon. And really, the short answer is that when you lock your entire worldview inside a vault, any new piece of information doesn't just challenge you.
No, it threatens to completely annihilate you.
Exactly. If everything is absolute, nothing can bend. And things that cannot bend will eventually snap.
I love how her book sets that up. But to really grasp how that breaking point happens, we can't just, talk in abstract concepts.
We have to ground it in a real human being.
Right. We have to look at the author herself. Rachel Held Evans grew up as what she describes as the perfect imposter.
That is such a heavy phrase. The perfect imposter.
I mean, picture this girl. Before she even had a driver's license, she could flawlessly recite these incredibly complex theological doctrines.
She knew every single answer to every question her community threw at her.
The memoir paints this picture of just an absolute model citizen. She actually won an award called the Best Christian Attitude at her school.
Wow.
And not just once, she won it 4 years in a row.
Which, if you think about the psychological pressure of that, it's just staggering.
It's immense. She was the ultimate rule follower. She got the highest test scores. She stayed perfectly pure.
She's universally praised by literally every adult in the room.
But, and this is where it gets dark, she was trapped in this intense funnel of cognitive dissonance.
Because on the outside, she is the gold standard.
Right. But on the inside, she writes that she was completely suffocating. She was suffering from severe, crippling anxiety.
It was manifesting physically, right?
Yes, physically. She had eczema so bad that she would wake up in the middle of the night having scratched her own skin until her bedsheets were literally bleeding.
Oh my God.
Just raw panic. And you have to ask, what is a teenager so terrified of?
She wasn't afraid of failing a math test.
No, she was terrified that she might accidentally uncover a dark secret about God.
She was terrified of asking a question she wasn't supposed to ask.
When I read that part, I immediately thought, this is imposter syndrome on steroids.
Yeah, completely.
We talk about imposter syndrome at work, right? The fear that your boss will figure out you don't know how to use Excel and you'll get fired.
Right, but this is entirely different. This is the fear that you will be fired from the universe.
Yes, fired from the universe. Fearing you'll be eternally condemned if your internal thoughts don't perfectly match your external performance.
From a psychological standpoint, it explains why high-achieving, hyper-controlled environments breed the most severe doubt.
Because perfectionism isn't actually faith.
No, it's a defense mechanism against terror. She wasn't holding on to her beliefs because they brought her peace. She was holding on with a death grip.
Right, holding on so tight her fingernails were cutting into her own palms. Because if she let go even a little bit, she believed the entire universe would collapse.
But to understand why she felt that immense, suffocating pressure, you have to look at the soil she was planted in.
You mean her hometown?
Yeah, geography is destiny here. We have to talk about Dayton, Tennessee.
Monkey town.
Exactly. Dayton is this tiny, quiet mountain town. Just a few thousand people nestled in the Appalachian Mountains.
The memoir describes it as a place surrounded by deep conservative values and, bizarrely, literally surrounded by nuclear power plants.
It's a town of immense contrasts. It's a place where, at one point in its history, public school teachers were so opposed to modern science that they would literally physically tear the chapters on biology out of the public school textbooks.
Just ripping the pages out before handing them to the kids.
Right. So the obvious question here is, how did this incredibly quiet, isolated town accidentally make itself the laughingstock of the entire planet overnight?
This part just blew my mind. It was a PR stunt.
It really was, the whole thing.
The entire 1925 Scopes monkey trial was a manufactured publicity stunt.
You have to go back to May of 1925. There's this man named George Rapelier. He was a local manager at a coal company, and he just rushed into Robinson's drugstore on Main Street with a scheme.
Because the local economy was struggling, right?
Exactly. He wanted to put Dayton on the map to bring in tourist dollars.
Yeah.
And he had seen this ad from the ACLU.
The American Civil Liberties Union.
Right. Tennessee had just passed a law making it a crime to teach human evolution. And the ACLU was looking for a teacher willing to test the law in court.
And Rapelea and the drugstore gang saw this and thought, this is it. This is how we get national clout.
They did not care about the theology at all. They orchestrated the entire trial just to sell sodas and book hotel rooms.
They found this quiet 24-year-old substitute biology teacher named John Scopes. And they basically talked him into admitting that he might have used the banned textbook.
It was completely orchestrated. And strictly from a business perspective, it worked.
Oh, it exploded. 200 newspaper reporters descended on this tiny mountain town.
It was the first live radio broadcast of a trial in human history.
The atmosphere was a total circus. They brought in a live chimpanzee, and tourists were paying money to take pictures with it.
The local constable even put a sign on his motorcycle that said, Monkeyville Police.
But they didn't realize that a stunt designed to sell hot dogs was going to completely destroy their intellectual reputation forever.
Right. They thought they were hosting a fun debate. They accidentally sparked a century-long culture war.
Because you can't control a fire once you light it. The trial attracted absolute heavyweights. It became the clash of the century.
Which leads us to what happened on the courthouse lawn.
The deadly courtroom lawn.
Yeah. The stakes went global. On the defense side, you had Clarence Darrow, the most famous criminal defense lawyer in America, an outspoken agnostic.
And for the prosecution, you had William Jennings Bryan, a political titan, a 3-time nominee for President of the United States.
He was the undisputed champion of the Orthodox movement.
The courthouse was so packed, and it was so unbelievably hot in the Tennessee summer, the judge literally feared the floorboards would collapse.
So they moved the entire trial outside onto the grass.
And then Clarence Darrow did something unprecedented. The judge had ruled he couldn't bring in scientific experts. So Darrow pivots. He calls the prosecuting attorney, William Jennings Bryan, to the witness stand.
As an expert witness on the Bible.
Right. And this is where the intellectual slaughter happens. Darrow didn't scream. He didn't mock the crowd. He just asked very calm, logical questions about literalism.
He asked Bryan about the story of Joshua in the Old Testament, where the sun supposedly stands still in the sky.
And Darrow just asks a basic physics question. He says, have you ever pondered what would naturally happen to the Earth if it suddenly stopped rotating?
Bryan admitted he had never thought about it.
So Darrow presses him, don't you know that if the Earth stopped spinning, it would physically melt into a molten mass?
Bryan had absolutely no answer. He was totally caught off guard.
Darrow keeps going. He asks about the logistical age of the Earth. Bryan doesn't know. He asks about the math of Noah's flood. Bryan can't answer.
And then Darrow delivers the final blow. He looks at this great political titan and asks, do you think about things you do think about?
And the crowd, who loved Bryan, actually started laughing at him. Bryan was visibly sweating, and his entire defense rested on this one terrifying quote. Bryan said, I do not think about things I don't think about.
It's the ultimate expression of ignorance as a shield.
Right.
And that shield works fine until someone simply asks you to explain it.
Now here's the crazy paradox. Legally speaking, Bryan actually won the case. Scopes was fined $100.
Yeah, the jury deliberated for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
But intellectually, Brian suffered an absolute slaughter.
It's the classic Pyrrhic victory. It's like winning a board game but burning down your own house to do it. A legal victory, but a massive ideological retreat.
And the tragedy is, just 5 days after the trial ended, William Jennings Bryan laid down for a nap and died in his sleep, right there in Dayton.
Crushed by the humiliation. But you'd think that would be the end of it, right?
You would assume the fundamentalist movement would just fade away.
But the memoir points out they didn't surrender to modern science. They evolved. They weaponized.
Enter the high IQ rebellion, the modern apologetics movement.
They decided they would never let someone like Darrow make them look stupid again. So they built this massive intellectual fortress.
They created systematic theology courses, published thousands of books, built debate camps.
Which leads to the story in the book about Dr. Coate Wise. This story is just, it's wild.
Dr. Wise is a fascinating figure. He was a leading voice in the creationist movement, but he wasn't uneducated. He actually had a degree in paleontology from Harvard.
He studied under Stephen Jay Gould. He was brilliant.
But the memoir tells this story of when Wise was younger. He realized he simply could not reconcile the scientific timeline of evolution with a literal reading of his Bible.
So what does he do? He buys a brand new Bible, he sits down at his desk with a physical pair of scissors, and he literally starts cutting.
He physically cut out every single verse that conflicted with evolution.
Just slicing away the pages. And when he finished, he tried to pick the book up. But he had cut so much out of it that the physical binding had been destroyed. The book just fell apart in his hands.
And in that moment, looking at the shredded pages, he made a choice. He chose the literal Bible, and he completely rejected evolutionary science.
Rachel uses this to show how they built this fortress. Towers of creationism, towers of political lobbying.
But the fatal crack wasn't coming from atheists attacking the walls.
No, it's like building a Death Star. It's a terrifyingly smart defense system, but it has one tiny thermal exhaust port that can blow the whole thing up.
And that crack was coming from the inside. They trained a generation of kids like Rachel to demand hard evidence and critique logical fallacies.
And eventually, those highly intelligent kids turned that exact same analytical eye onto their own faith.
And when they did, they found the cosmic lottery.
The cosmic lottery. This is the concept that really shatters everything for Rachel.
It's a devastatingly simple question. What if the absolute truth you are willing to die for was decided almost entirely by your birth zip code?
Just let that sink in. Rachel looks at her own life. Born in America in 1981. So naturally, she's Christian.
But what if the variables change? What if she was born in Afghanistan? What if her name was Zarmina?
The mathematical probability is undeniable. She would be Muslim.
If your eternal destiny is based 99% on geography, is faith really about free will? Or is it just a God-run casino where the chips are handed out completely at random?
It totally shatters the illusion of moral superiority. You aren't right because you're exceptionally smart. You're right because of where your mother happened to go into labor.
And this brings Rachel to the most brutal realization of her journey, the story of the white sneakers under the burqa.
This part is so heavy. Rachel watches this piece of secret smuggled video footage. Grainy TV footage of an execution in Afghanistan carried out by the Taliban in a stadium.
She watched a real Afghan mother, Zarmina, being forced to kneel in the dirt in a full burqa, and she was shot.
But amidst that horrific violence, Rachel noticed one tiny detail. Underneath the hem of the burqa, Zarmina was wearing a pair of ordinary white tennis shoes.
Just normal sneakers.
And those white sneakers triggered a massive theological collapse for Rachel. Because according to the mainstream theology she was taught,
Zarmina's suffering didn't end with that bullet.
No. According to strict doctrine, because she wasn't Christian, Zarmina went from a literal hell on earth directly into eternal hellfire.
The absolute horror of double punishment.
It breaks the human brain. It's like rescuing someone from a burning building just to immediately throw them into a live volcano.
Abstract theology is easy when you're debating in a classroom. But when you apply it to a bleeding human being wearing white tennis shoes, that is where dogma dies.
So how do religious experts justify that? How do they defend a system that cruel?
Rachel points to what she calls pond scum theology.
Reformed theology. Calvinism.
Right. The belief that human nature is so utterly depraved, so vile, that God is perfectly justified in burning absolutely everyone.
Under this logic, saving a few people is just arbitrary mercy. The baseline is that we are all disgusting.
There's that famous sermon by Jonathan Edwards comparing humans to venomous spiders dangling by a thread over a fire, with God just completely disgusted by us.
Well, Rachel refuses to let this remain a thought experiment. She applies it to reality. She asks, what about Anne Frank?
Did a teenage girl hiding in an attic deserve the Holocaust? And did she deserve hell afterward because she wasn't Christian?
Rachel argues this theology requires you to actively suppress your innate sense of love and justice. If a human parent treated their kids the way this theology says God treats us, they'd be locked in a maximum security prison for child abuse.
It's emotionally bankrupt, and it creates what she calls the phenomenon of colliding prayers.
Right, the geopolitical reality. She talks about her friend Nathan, a U.S. soldier deployed to the Middle East. Nathan is scared, so he prays to God for safety and victory for his unit.
But on the other side of the war zone, there is a devout, fasting Iraqi mother, and she is praying to the exact same God for safety for her country.
So, when an American soldier and an Iraqi mother pray to the exact same God, whose bullet does God guide?
It exposes the sheer absurdity of tying geopolitics to divine will.
It shatters the illusion that God is a national mascot draped in an American flag. When God is on everyone's side, the concept of a holy war collapses into a tragic farce.
Which forces Rachel to completely reevaluate salvation. If it's not about geopolitical dominance, what is it?
To answer that, we go to India. She meets a woman named Laxmi.
Laxmi was a Hindu widow who contracted HIV. Because of the stigma, she was abandoned, starving. She just wanted to drink poison and die.
But she was taken in by a group of Christians running a care center, and they didn't hand her a theological textbook. They didn't demand she recite a doctrine.
No, they washed her, they fed her, they gave her a bed.
And because of that, Laxmi told Rachel, thank God I got HIV.
Why would a starving widow say that?
Because the disease, as horrific as it was, brought her to a place where she experienced unconditional love for the first time. It brought her to salvation.
It contrasts two models. Model A, the Western model, is an intellectual transaction. Agree with these doctrines, get a ticket to heaven.
But Model B, what she saw in India, is concrete love. Hands in tennis shoes. You can't eat a theology textbook. Salvation for Laxmi was literally a plate of food.
But that beautiful reality clashes violently with the American church Rachel returned to.
The paved parking lot versus the orphan's tears.
She goes to her wealthy American church, and the pastor proudly announces that God has miraculously provided the funds to pave their massive new parking lot.
And while the congregation is clapping for asphalt, Rachel is picturing an Indian orphan she met named Kanakaraju.
A boy who was watching his mother die on a concrete floor despite his fervent prayers.
Calling a paved parking lot a miracle while children starve requires a terrifying level of moral blindness.
It's peak self-centeredness, and it exposes the deeply flawed selective outrage radar of the religious establishment.
Oh, the selective outrage. This is so sharp. Why do people who scream on TV about condemning minority sexualities go completely blind when they look in the mirror at their own greed?
They organize massive campaigns against homosexuality, but completely ignore gluttony, rampant capitalism, and the pride of judging their neighbors.
The red line of condemnation is severely skewed toward marginalizing the weak while providing total immunity for the rich.
It's like a doctor aggressively diagnosing a tiny paper cut on a stranger while completely ignoring the massive heart attack happening in their own chest.
And the ultimate proof of this is the braided hair loophole.
1 Timothy chapter 2.
Fundamentalist institutions use a specific verse there to declare with absolute certainty that women cannot preach or hold authority over men. They treat it as eternal law.
But in the exact same breath, in the exact same paragraph, the text explicitly says women should not braid their hair or wear expensive clothes.
And yet you won't find a conservative church policing women's hairstyles. They casually ignore it as a cultural suggestion.
They use a cultural filter for braided hair, for eating shellfish, for justifying slavery historically, but claim literalism for silencing women.
Rachel argues we claim the text is perfect, but we actually use it as a mirror to justify the biases we already hold. We weaponize the pages.
Which brings up the childhood game of sword drills.
Kids racing to find Bible verses as fast as they can. The Bible is the sword.
It starts harmless, but as adults, it morphs into ideological warfare, throwing isolated verses at each other from theological trenches.
Calvinism versus Arminianism. Verse against verse. Dagger against dagger.
We try to stop others from tearing us apart, but we end up building idols out of paper and ink.
It's like taking a beautiful love letter, folding it into a paper airplane, and just poking someone in the eye with it. You completely miss the point.
So Rachel realizes her faith has to change to survive. And she uses this incredible biological metaphor, the blind cave fish.
The cave angelfish of Thailand.
In the ocean, this fish has perfect vision. but occasionally it washes deep into a pitch-black, rushing underground cave system.
The environment completely changes. It's violent and dark.
So to survive, it intentionally mutates. It loses its sight entirely. The eyes grow over with skin, and it grows microscopic hooks on its fins to cling to the rocks.
It literally goes blind just to stay alive in the rushing water.
Rachel uses this as the metaphor for faith. Sometimes, to survive the dark abyss of doubt, you have to let go of your absolute certain vision.
You have to adapt. Losing your dogmatic certainty isn't a failure. It is a biological necessity for survival.
If you refuse to adapt, you'll be crushed against the rocks.
Which leads us to the ultimate conclusion. The realization that the most profound, most scientifically accurate answer an expert can ever give is 3 simple words.
I don't know.
Why is that so powerful? Because it breaks the time loop we started with. In 1925, Monkeytown refused to accept complex biology. Today, we refuse complex humanity.
Look at the cognitive quadrant. You have knowns, you have false certainties, and you have the massive abyss of the unknown.
Admitting ignorance isn't weakness. It's the first step of evolution. Rachel's journey ends with her willing to look at the universe and simply say, I don't know.
And that is the final thought we want to leave you with.
Yeah.
Because the storm is coming.
The inevitable storm of AI algorithms, political rage, and echo chambers. When that hits you, what is your house built on?
Is it built on the fragile, rigid concrete of absolute doctrine?
Or is it built on the adaptable, unbreakable rock of simply loving your neighbor?
Think about what you are clinging to. Is it actually saving you?
Or is it just slowly suffocating you?